Hi, my name is Jeff Goldfinger. Welcome to my channel. So there's an old joke about how to tell the difference between an introverted engineer and an extroverted engineer at a social setting. The extroverted engineer looks down at your shoes instead of their own. So the stereotype of the shy nerd was popularized in this TV show, The Big Bang Theory. It reinforced the idea that being super smart by itself is insufficient if you want to be successful, both professionally and personally. Although the focus of the show was on the hard sciences, I contend that the real plot line was all about their acquisition of social skills. And the proof of that is Bernadette's ability to kick butt in pharma, Howard leading a gyroscope development team, Koothrappali finding his self-confidence at an observatory. And then the pièce de résistance was Sheldon, Amy, and Dr. Siebert learning how to navigate the politics and competitiveness required to earn a Nobel Prize. This culminated in the final episode where Sheldon has his aha moment. Sorry, not that aha moment, but his EQ aha moment when he shifts gears at the start of his acceptance speech to recognize the unflinching contribution of his friends. So, being STEM educated, I discovered that intelligence alone is only partially correlated with career enhancement. Whether your measure of success includes salary, titles, leadership opportunities, a Nobel Prize, it's vital to observe the reality that we propagate in highly competitive workplace environments, the noise. What we need to do is learn how to tell more compelling narratives so that our signal, our career signal, can rise above the noise. And that's the purpose of my channel. Welcome to the STEM Signal, the channel dedicated to helping the STEM educated to amplify their career potential. But because you're all STEM educated, my plan is to use hard science to give you soft skills. So we'll be talking about that in the future. If you want to look it up, I'm going to be using neuroeconomics, which is the intersection between cognitive psychology, neuroscience, and behavioral economics. All right, so where we begin? Well, we are always competing. We live in a highly competitive world that starts in grade school. That's the takeaway for today's lesson, is to understand that we compete for jobs, for grant money, for product development funding, for salary increases, for job titles, etc. But no matter how smart you are, if you are unable to properly articulate your ideas, your signal, at best your ambitions will be delayed, and at worst they will be completely thwarted. So there was another stereotype movie back in the 80s or 90s, I can't remember now. It's called White Men Can't Jump, and it took advantage of the stereotype that white men can't play basketball. Well, I submit to you my experience, my anecdotal experience, is I've seen plenty of STEM educated that don't know how to write compelling narratives, applications for work, or can't deliver a powerful speech. Okay, as a couple of examples, here's Dr. George Ohm. In 1827, he wrote a paper titled "The Galvanic Circuit Investigated Mathematically." Wow, that's a mouthful. We all know him now as Ohm's law, right? The eponymous operation that all electrical engineers and technicians use to design circuits. But back then, his paper was so poorly received, he was essentially chased out of his prestigious academic job. He actually left, he resigned out of embarrassment, essentially, and spent the next few years scraping by doing tutoring, odd job tutoring work in the area. Until finally, about a decade later, he was able to get a new academic position. And then around 1841, 14 years after he delivered his paper, he was given an award and granted the recognition he deserved. A more recent example is Dr. Andrea Ghez. Dr. Ghez in 2020 became the fourth woman in history to win the Physics Nobel Prize. She won the Nobel for her finding of a supermassive black hole at the center of our galaxy. How was she able to do that? Well, back in 1994, when she showed up at UCLA with her doctorate degree, she wanted to use the Keck Observatory, the then largest observatory in the world. But it was a very expensive telescope. Cost about $50,000 a night, not your average Airbnb. So she put her proposal together, submitted it to the committee, and the first time around, kind of the same results as we saw earlier with Dr. Ohm. So she learned a lot from that lesson, how to overcome rejection. And in her own words, to me it was so obvious that it was such a good idea. I realized when you're trying to convince a group of people to do something that hasn't been done before, just because you think it's a good idea, that doesn't mean they're going to accept it. So it forced me to articulate the science better. I want to restate that. It forced me to articulate the science better. That's the opportunity. Figure out what they didn't like and strengthen the argument. Obviously, she was successful at that because she was able to get her Nobel Prize, and she's become a wonderful public speaker. You should really listen to one of her talks on YouTube. She's a really excellent promoter of all the sciences. Okay? All right, so I started out with white men can't jump, STEM educated can't write, but even Kripke knows that writing well really works. So we want to make sure that we can write and speak compelling narratives. So at the STEM Signal, why should you listen to me? So a little bit about my background. In the 1980s, 1982 in particular, I graduated from Northwestern University with a Bachelor of Science in Computer Science, but I'm so old that we used punch cards. I then went into the Navy to fly E-2 Hawkeyes as a backseater. I was a naval flight officer operating the radar and communications gear off of aircraft carriers. This was the USS Carl Vinson. I made my first 2 deployments aboard the Carl Vinson. I then spent the rest of my career flying both manned and unmanned aircraft, this being an unmanned Pioneer UAV. Then at the very final phase of my career, I shifted over to flying a desk where I became a contracting officer's technical representative on a UAV project for the Navy. This was actually my very first competitive award. We had to compete internal to the military against the other services for a $20 million project that we eventually won. We were selected. Okay, after my tour in the Navy, I went to work at a small systems engineering company, Brandis, and then a very large one, the 10th largest in the world in their industry at the time, as a director of both domestic and international business development and sales. But I noticed something in the industry, and it's not unique to L3, but really the entire aerospace industry, is everybody was focusing on the thing, the product, the service, the flux capacitor, if you will. And I realized that my success, my accomplishments were all about developing the human-to-human relationship. So I started my company called Extra Mile Training and Development to train my corporate clients in how to put the H2H back into B2B, the human-to-human back into business-to-business. I love teaching. This is now my shtick, as it were. I am in the 3rd trimester of my life, and I want to now educate the next generation of STEM individuals on how to succeed. So it begins with my personal why. I recognized my love for teaching about 40 years ago when I was the waterfront director at a summer camp at the Wisconsin Dells in Wisconsin, USA. We had a roped off area on the lake where people could, the kids could swim. And then outside the lake, we told them that the Loch Ness Monster lives there, so don't go outside the rope. At the end of the summer, we had a graduation swim, and we let the kids swim across the lake. Big deal to them. 1/8 of a mile to a 9-year-old, pretty big deal. And I still remember today, this young girl, she was swimming halfway across, started floundering, asked to get into the safety boat. But I had seen her all summer long. I knew she had the ability to swim. She just lost her self-confidence. So I got in the water with her, swam alongside next to her, helped her restore her confidence, got her breathing settled down. I got back in the safety boat. She swam the rest of the way, and I still see her face today every now and then. She gets to the shoreline, big beaming smile, turns around, gives me the big V for victory sign. Love it. That's my personal why. My goal is to help people swim across their lake, whatever lake they have. I've been teaching many subjects While in the Navy, I taught at 3 different weapons schools. I've taught flight instruction. I've taught accident investigations. I've taught swimming and CPR and first aid. Bottom line is I have taught all types of subjects from vocational to master's level at both civilian and military institutions. And this is now what I plan on doing with the STEM signal, is helping teach you all how to increase your career signal above the workplace noise. Okay, so thank you for joining me today. This was a short lesson. And this being the first episode of the channel, I'm really eager to get your feedback. Please go ahead and put your comments in. Don't worry about the subscribe and the bell and all that. That's not what I care about. I care about making sure this channel is meeting your needs. Okay? So please do me a favor. Tell me what I did right to keep doing. Let me know what I did wrong, what I can fix. And also, please list some topics you may want to see in the coming episodes. Okay? So thank you very much. Again, my name is Jeff Goldfinger. This is the STEM Signal. And until next time, keep your signal above the noise. Let's get down.